Next up in Illustrator is one of my very favorite tricks or features of Illustrator, converting raster images to editable vector art. So rasters are photographs. They're made up of pixels or bitmaps. And obviously vector art is very different. It's anchors and points. So we're going to learn how to use the image trace command that's going to convert a raster image into this editable vector artwork. We are going to start in Illustrator by doing a file place. So instead of opening something and then dragging it in, we're going to go get it and directly place it here. So file, place, and then you are going to navigate to your 2020 folder. There it is. Textbook. Oh no, that's Photoshop. We're in Illustrator, aren't we? Wow. All right, there it is. Illustrator, chapter 3. And we have a lemon JPEG. So this is a photograph of a lemon. It's pretty obvious that that's not vector art. We see shadows, we see texture. It's obviously a photo. We're going to click on the place button. And what that does is it loads up that image in our cursor. Had we clicked on 3 different things, it would have said 1 of 3 and we could have placed them one at a time without going back into that dialog. There's only one thing that we copied, so it says 1 of 1. Now wherever we click, it is going to place that image. So click and place the image, and it's quite large. So you're going to zoom out, Command minus, and it's pretty obvious that we're looking at vector art. We can see the pixels, we can see the jagged edge, we can see the continuous tone that we get from photographs, and it is obviously not vector art. So with the image still selected, we see our bounding box around it. We're going to come over to our properties panel and we're going to come down to the quick actions and we're going to choose image trace. If for any reason this is not showing, you can always get this under object, image trace, make. Same thing, but they've been nice enough to give us a quick button. So image trace, you click on that and we're going to get some drop downs here, and I just want to show you what a couple of these look like. Let's try 3 colors. That took 3 colors. Basically, it's a tannish white, this color yellow, this color yellow. Let's try a high fidelity photo, meaning keep it looking as much like a photo as you can. That's pretty amazing. But these are actually all chunks of color. It's not editable yet. We haven't gone to that step of doing that, but that's pretty amazing. Another option that we're going to go down to is silhouettes. And we look at that and we go, ooh, that's not so good. But actually, this is what we want. This is going to trace the image and force the resulting vector to turn black. So we're making a silhouette. To the right of our image trace silhouettes, we have an additional menu that says Open the Image Trace panel. Click on that. I'm going to move this panel over here, and we see some presets that we just saw before. We see a tracing result, which is our view that we get. We have a threshold, and then we have, this is actually probably twirled shut. If it is, we want to twirl open this advanced button right here. So twirl that open, and now we're going to see how many paths, how many corners, and how much noise we're having put in here. So the threshold, we can pull this around and we can see different results of what we're getting. So somewhere in there, hey, that's not too bad, is it? In the book, they say specifically we're going to take it up to 206, but you would do that, you wouldn't know what number to use. You would do what I was doing by just pulling that slider. We're going to hit tab and come down to the next one. So a low number of paths, see how it's getting more and more rounded on the edges, or a high number of paths, and see how it's really making outlines of all these jagged edges. So that's a bit too extreme. The number of, or the percentage of paths that we're going to go with is 20%. That makes a decent shape of our lemon. Corners, 50% is the default setting, and you can see if you make it extreme, either direction, it changes just a little where we have hard anchor points. But we're going to leave it at the default of 50%. And then noise, we're going to crank all the way up to 100 pixels. And then from there, we can close this floating image trace window. All right, at this point, we have not done anything, but we've originally made the shape. We haven't turned it into vector images yet. That happens when we come back to the Properties panel and we click on Expand. Also, up in the Object Image Trace, we could have done a first step of Make and Expand all in one step, but then we couldn't have tweaked it. So we now can let it go, release it, or we can expand it here as well. Obviously, it's just as easy to use the button over here, so we say Expand, and now we actually see our vector path around here. If we go into outline mode, which is Command Y, there it is, and there are the anchor points that are connecting curves. So from this anchor point to this anchor point, we have this curve being made. Go back to Command Y to get back into our regular view, and at this point, everything is selected, and we can tell it is grouped because if we look at the top right of our property panel, it says group. So this piece and this piece are grouped together, and if we were to move it, it would, if we were to move it, it would move as one unit. So we want to come to our property panel at the bottom, and we want to ungroup them. Then we're going to click away to deselect them and come back and just select this one floating piece that we don't want, and we're going to hit delete on our keyboard and it's gone. Now we're going to click to select the lemon shape, and we're going to click on our fill box and we're going to change it to a yellow color. I'm just going to use the super bright CMYK yellow. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is sometimes when image trace happens, it puts in lots of anchor points. Like instead of going from, let me show you outline again. Instead of going from here to here, sometimes it has, 7 dots here, or like right here. Those two are really close for no good reason. Command Y to get back to the regular. So to make the edges look a little bit smoother, we're going to apply a simplify command. This is going to reduce the number of anchor points that the path is made up of without affecting the overall shape too much. And it's actually a slider. If we go too far, we can bring back anchor points. If we oversimplify, we can fix it. So with the lemon selected, we're going to come up to Object, come down to Path, and then in the middle we see Simplify. And again, another box is going to pop up, and the far left is a very simple path, 2 anchor points. The far right is the most difficult, maximum. So we can pull this down and take away anchor points, and you can see it kind of lost some of its detail here, or we can go all the way up to the maximum point and we get a little bit better detail here. So anywhere in this slider, we could back it off a little bit until we're happy with the shape. We can also click on these 3 dots, the More option button, and in this, you want to move your menu away from your lemon and make sure that this preview window is turned on. So put a check mark in it. That's going to show you a live representation of what's going on in the actual lemon. So from here, we can simplify the curve. We can pull on that until we're seeing what we don't like. As I'm doing it, I'm seeing a big difference right here on this end. We can add to the points. Notice that as we're doing this down here, it says originally this was 12 points, and right now we're down to 8. If I crank it all the way up, the maximum reduction it can do is drop 1 point and keep it at 11 points. And that looks quite good too. But as we bring it down a little bit, it's still looking pretty good. The less points on your paths, the easier it is to edit, and it also helps keep your file size down. If you have 500 anchor points on this lemon and you only need 6, it's definitely going to cause Illustrator to work harder and to remember more, and that's not something you need to do. So you can play around with this until you get it where you're happy with it. I think in the book they took it all the way down to 5 points, 4, 5. That's where they said they were happy with it. That's okay, you can decide. The angle threshold is the angle of a corner point and how much it changes. So we can see what it's doing here on some of our hard angles, which we don't have a lot of. So I'm just going to leave that alone. And then from here, we're just going to say, okay. And then we're going to scale down this lemon and we're going to do it proportionately. So with our selection tool, as we start moving this, you can see I'm not proportionate, but as we start, we're going to hold the shift key and that's going to keep us perfectly proportionate. And we're going to bring it down to a width of approximately 1.2 inches. So somewhere in there. And then we're going to move it onto an empty part of our artboard. All right, in the book on page 103 in the outside column, you should always read those outside columns because quite often it tells you another way of doing things, a better way of doing things, or a tip. And the tip is about using Adobe Capture, which is a free app on your smartphone or your device. You can take pictures of objects, designs, and shapes and convert them into vector shapes in a few simple steps. Everything that you do and take pictures of is going to store in your Adobe Cloud library, which is over here. And your library is available to you wherever you go. So these are things that in the past I have stored, and I have additional libraries. There's a project later on where you share them with me. So these are past students sharing libraries with me. But in here is where anything you take in Adobe Capture will sync to and you can use it later. So this image trace that we just used, think about somebody gives you a picture of a logo and wants you to do something with it, but they don't have the vector art. Using this image trace and using the right combination of how are you going to do it, how detailed is it, and tweaking it, you can make an excellent vector graphic from a photograph. So if I were to do high fidelity photo, it's going to have tons and tons and tons of lines and anchor points and paths and shapes, but it's almost going to look like a photo, especially from a distance, like on a billboard. If you do 3 color or 6 color, whatever limitation you put on it, it's going to limit the vector lines a little bit. In some cases, it's going to be exactly what you're looking for, and in some cases, it's not going to be so great. So I'm just going to show you a quick example of a photograph. So I'm going to do a file, place, and just to show you the power of this, I'm going to grab a random picture. Okay, Jersey headshot, one of my sweet goats. So I'm just going to place it here. It's big. I'll zoom out. She still had her beard, hadn't shaved her yet. Once this is loaded, if you don't see image trace over here, remember it's under Object Image Trace, but I'm going to choose the button here. And look at these options. Let me just show you some goofy ones. Silhouettes, not so good on that. How about line art? Crazy, but that's line art. Technical drawing, also going to look bizarre. So let's do something maybe better. 16 colors. See how it kind of looks like a water painting? And I'm going to show you high fidelity photo, meaning make it look like a photo as best you can. And it's thinking, wow, there we go. And if I click expand and go into outline mode, that's what you get. So let me tell you, if I ever open up one of your projects, especially in early days, and I go into outline mode and I see something like this, and all these anchor points, I'm going to be pretty sure that you image traced. And that's not what I'm looking for 9.9 times out of 10. In this class, you're going to be drawing things for real, not image tracing, unless specifically told that you can do it like you are in this exercise. So again, this is kind of neat though, because with this, we could probably put that on the side of a building because this is vector art. We can scale it 50 feet by 50 feet. And from a distance, it's almost going to look like a photo. So it's kind of a neat thing. All right, I'm going to say goodbye to my poor sweet girl. Goodbye. And at this point, we're going to do a file, save as, and we are going to save this as page 106 if you want to save incrementally. The good news is we just have the drawing modes to discuss, and then once we get that done, we're going to put our fruit in the basket and be done with this exercise. So save your file and join me for the next video.